from this one, from the one you just sent me. So I'm wondering whether there may be people out there in the world trying to get in, but not able to, as I was unable to until you resent the link.
Maybe you should make a little announcement, Steph, to tell people to go to the BIM website on the homepage, scroll down to meetings and follow the link that's on the agenda.
To announce to,
Well, maybe people are trying to watch on YouTube that wanted to. Oh, we've got one person.
Yeah, I clicked on the join Zoom meeting link for the revised 2 agenda that was sent out this afternoon. It takes it to a different community meeting.
Okay, Steph, I'm going to try and join in again from a different computer, and then I'll get rid of the other one. That works.
Meeting link.
Oh, so I don't want to follow the one that
okay, so there's Patrick. Okay, so thanks so much everyone for coming. Just want to start with providing introductions. I'm Steph, I'm the committee coordinator. We have with us today Kristen Watson, who's the Chief Financial Officer, Patrick Graham, who is our Director of Engineering, Annette Frischman, who is the Utilities Coordinator. Councillor Morse is attempting to log on at the moment. From the committee, we've got Rob Duffy as the chair of the Bluewater Park Water System Local Advisory Committee. Michael Rushton is our vice chair. Say hi, Michael. Jonathan Bell and Jerry Kane are hardworking members of our LAC committee. Members of the public who are here, thank you so much for coming. You are welcome to ask questions throughout the meeting. You can raise your actual hand, you can raise a digital hand, you can type your questions into the chat feature as well. So we'll start with, I think it's Annette is going to have a little talk about the drinking water quality report.
Yes, it's the annual drinking water report is published for our operating permit. It's a requirement from Vancouver Coastal Health. They review it also together with the medical health officer. And this is the first year, 2021 is the first year that it's a consolidated report for all water systems, one report. And the report summarizes the infrastructure of each system and the water quality data, which is tested through bacteriological sampling, E. coli for E. coli and total coliforms, which is done on a weekly basis, and chemical sampling for chlorine residuals, which is done daily, and disinfection byproducts, which is done about twice a year. There's also physical sampling for turbidity on a daily basis. The report is in your agenda for you to read, and it's also published on the BIM website under services, water and sewer. If you scroll down, all the supporting documents are linked in the report and published on the website. For Bluewater Park water system, there were no drinking water quality concerns in 2021. There was a slightly elevated manganese value, which was above the aesthetic maximum, recommended maximum, but of no concern for from the health perspective. There were no E. coli or total coliforms detected in any of the samples that were taken throughout the year. Feel free to, if you read the report, send me an email if you have questions, or if you have any now, I'm happy to take them. I may not have the answer, but I can get the answer to you later on.
Thank you, Annette. Does anyone have any questions about the water quality report?
I notice elevated manganese level value. Does that have any detrimental effect, Patrick, or just maybe explain that a bit more? You're on mute.
As Annette just mentioned, it's not above any level that would be a public health concern. It's above an aesthetic limit, which I believe they changed fairly recently. So it's not a concern.
Thanks, Rob. Anybody else? Okay, Patrick, can you give us an update on the water systems improvement plan, please?
Okay. So we did talk about this at the last meeting, and there were some, substantial infrastructure requirements that it was felt further discussion is needed on. So I've included with the agenda is a presentation that I'll go through to hopefully summarize for everybody, a little better the path forward and the decisions and the implications. There were a number of questions from Trevor and Rob. Well, 19 of them I attempted to answer earlier today, and so I'll bear that in mind going through the presentation and try and touch on that. And if there's something that they're still unclear on, we can we can have questions after. So I'll share my screen. Okay.
You're still on mute, Patrick.
Now. Okay, good. So this is intended to summarize the water systems improvement project, to provide an update on where we're at and what the next steps are. So we have done some assessment of the aquifers on the west side and the water systems. Key conclusion, and a lot of that's been discussed and presented with this group already. A key conclusion is that the current wells we have are capable of supplying current and future demand. Upgrades are required to achieve the full capacity of the existing wells. So the scenario that we've looked at would use essentially the best wells throughout the Bowen Bay, King Edward Bay, and Bluewater systems, and have all of those wells pumped to a common reservoir, which would be the existing King Edward Bay reservoir. In future phases, we would get into a new reservoir in Bluewater. There will also be a new reservoir as part of the fourth phase of the Arbutus Ridge development. But essentially, the best wells in the system are the Bowen Bay wells, the Arbutus well. One of the King Edward Bay wells is decent. The recommendation is that we only use one of the Bluewater wells, and that would be well 3. If it were upgraded, it could produce about twice as much as it currently does. The third King Edward Bay well it was recommended that we, it's currently overpowered with the pumping capacity it has, and it's not as productive a well as some of the others. It could be just used as a as an emergency well. So in terms of the phased approach to improvements, I mean, the most pressing and highest priority issue is the reliability of the domestic supply. You know, as you heard from Annette, it's not water quality isn't a concern. It's getting enough for everybody for domestic use, particularly in summer. So, you know, really, if we're able to implement phase one, it addresses that that issue. It consists of upgrading the 3 Bowen Bay wells plus the 1 Bluewater well, number 3, installing a new fill line from the Bowen Bay wells to the existing King Edward Bay reservoir. And then all systems would be supplied from that reservoir. So that's, you know, an estimated cost of $660,000, assuming we're pushing that out to next year. It was phase 2, 3, and 4 were laid out in the you know, the budget information, the 5-year budget information that we talked about at the last meeting. And essentially, these are all needed to provide fire flows throughout the system. So you need access to a large enough storage, and you need large enough mains to convey enough flow everywhere in the system. And so with that phased approach, we're looking at essentially replacing all of the water mains with new larger mains. 1 PRV needs to be replaced. New reservoir tank at the same site as the existing Bluewater tank, with a new fill line connected to King Edward Bay, Bowen Bay wells. So that's a much more significant cost, over $5 million. It's essentially a complete renewal of the water system. So it's an order of magnitude difference to address the domestic supply issue, and to address the need for fire flow. I should point out it's not just fire flow. I mean, the system is old, and the mains will all need to be replaced at some point. And if we're replacing mains, it would make sense to replace them with larger mains that can accommodate fire flows in the future. Another one of the questions that was raised about from Trevor and Rob was in terms of a new reservoir tank at Bluewater, does that need to be sized for fire flow? There's another option that involves essentially providing fire flows to the Bluewater system from the future phase 4 Arbutus Ridge reservoir, the high zone reservoir, that in order to provide fire flows to the whole system, I mean, that could provide fire flows to a good chunk of the system. In order to provide it to the north end would require a dedicated main. And the recommendation from the urban systems analysis was that a new reservoir is more cost effective, is a preferred approach, and also provides you know, a more resilient water system, you know, at the Bluewater site. So essentially, this is essentially what was presented at the last budget review, the 5-year plan. Things have been escalated because things have been pushed out. We were looking at 2021 cost estimates and previously, and now we're looking at 2023. Essentially what I said first is addressing the domestic supply by upgrading the wells, and then the subsequent phases involve water main replacement and reservoir construction primarily. scary, $6 million, talking about $6 million is can be scary for people. Talking about $660,000 is something that, we can more easily wrap our heads around, and, hopefully get some agreement to, borrow the necessary money to proceed with that next year. The Arbutus Ridge well is one of the better wells, and that coming online has bought us a bit of time. It is intended to be, covering the full supply requirements for that, all of that King Edward Bay development area to the east of Windjammer. So as that area gets built out, that we need to have new supply addressed before that happens. And then just in terms of, we never really got into much discussion about this. We did talk about this during those MOU discussions that we had over the past year. And I think the general agreement was that, benefiting parties paying for infrastructure upgrades makes sense. And so essentially this project is driven by the need to address the Bluewater domestic supply gap. And as such, the bulk of that is paid by would be paid by the Bluewater system, through borrowing. I assume that the reserves aren't anywhere near enough to cover that. There is some contribution from the Bowen Bay system, and that we're upgrading their wells. I just took a guess there, in terms of, we would look at an estimate of, okay, well, what's the net present value of those assets compared with, the net present value as if they were new, right? So they're getting new pumps. They would say, well, we don't need those. Fair enough, but they do have a higher value and that should be captured. But I think the expectation that we've hopefully created previously, and is not a surprise to folks here, is that Bluewater would be covering the bulk of that cost. This is just showing a map where, we have the 3 Bowen Bay wells, which are, well, those 3 and the Arbutus Ridge well here are the best wells, and they would be covering the bulk of the supply for all systems. It makes sense to run one well up here. The Bowen Bay 3 well is the best one, and we do need a new fill line to connect to Joan Audrey, the line at the intersection, in order to be able to pump from the Bowen Bay wells up to the King Edward Bay reservoir. And it's not shown on here, but in future there'd be a reservoir up here higher. And then the trick is, in terms of fire protection, getting that water up to the north end of the Bluewater system. And if there's in future phases a new reservoir up here, that's the other recommended approach. So that's really the focus of what we'd like to get some agreement and approval to move forward with next year and to put in the budget for next year. And I mean, obviously we have to talk about financing options, but that would be my primary objective. I think ideally we would have a MOU in place. If we don't, we don't. I don't see that as being a showstopper to moving forward. Yeah, so I mean, it's essentially well upgrades, and then phase two. Oh, sorry, this is Bowen Bay. Just to give a perspective to on other system requirements, or it's essentially operated as one system in the scenario I'm describing. So they would have the well upgrades we've already talked about, and then essentially they need to replace all of their water mains with larger mains in order to realize the benefit of fire protection that would come from being connected to the King Edward Bay Reservoir. They supplied from the King Edward Bay Reservoir, then they're not needing a new reservoir.
Patrick, it looks like Jonathan's got a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Jonathan?
I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I'm not
Sure.
understanding, like, we've got lots of water now. I'm from Bluewater. Like, we've been going fine for, I don't know, last 15 years since we've hooked up with King Edward Bay. So why is the need, why there seems to be a need for all these upgrades?
Well,
Our
you've
supply
got,
seems to be fine in the summer. We're talking 3 months in the summer, right? And it's been fine for 15 years. It's been fine.
it's been fine. I don't
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
been
been
fine.
fine. I think there's been supply issues, and
No, there hasn't. There's an issue a couple of years ago. There's a big leak.
Mhm.
That was the issue that 1 year. Up till then, there hasn't been. I've lived here for a long time, so I know exactly whether there's been a supply or not. So I'm sorry, I don't understand the idea of all this spending all this money for, you're talking about this for supply, when we seem to be going along fine, and now it's probably going to be better with this new Arbutus Ridge well.
Okay, well, I don't think that's the message we were getting from the LAC members that are representing this community. They've expressed pretty clearly throughout our meetings that they are very concerned about supply. And the King Edward Bay. So I mean, essentially the supply is, the supply's been keeping up because you're getting most of your water from King Edward Bay.
Exactly. So it's great. It's been working fine.
It's not
So
working.
what's the issue?
The issue is you don't have enough water.
We do. That's like, sorry.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna sit here. and
Okay.
argue
Well,
with
you're
you.
going to get challenged on it right
So-
to the end.
Patrick,
Well, I mean, we don't have to spend any money if you don't want. I mean, this is your system. If you want to improve your supply and make sure you have enough for everybody every year, every summer, we can go ahead and do that. I'm not going to beat my head against a wall trying to force something down anyone's throat. So, you tell me what you want to do.
I'm just gonna make a comment here, Patrick. This is actually not our system. This is your system.
Yeah.
BIM owns the system. BIM operates the system. BIM is responsible for providing the residents with an adequate supply of water to meet its needs. Now, there may be differences of opinion about what is adequate, but ultimately, you have to take responsibility for this, Patrick.
Mm.
You can't hand that off to a volunteer committee of advisors. I'm sorry, it's just not, it's not right.
Okay. Well,
So-
this is what I'm.
Patrick,
this is
it's
what I'm telling
Allison.
you.
Can
Allison,
I
yeah.
add something?
Yeah.
I think part of the issue that, to answer Jonathan's question, is King Edward Bay, when it was first interconnected, I think only had maybe 5 houses. And now I think all the lower lots are now pretty well all built out. And so there was excess water in King Edward Bay back in the beginning. And as you pointed out, when the Arbutus Ridge development gets fully built out, they'll take most of the water that those new wells are taking. So I think it was fortunate that Bluewater was able to, that King Edward Bay had excess water because they weren't fully built out. And that sort of solved the problem for Bluewater. But once King Edward Bay and Arbutus Ridge get fully built out, there isn't going to be all that excess water. Is that a
Thank you,
fair
Allison.
I think,
summary?
I mean, last couple of years, we've had lots of water. I mean, there hasn't been any more development.
But it's not built out yet, Jonathan.
It's still
Well,
underway. They're just starting. I mean, they've built 9 lots and there's going to be,
No, I'm talking about King Edward Bay. Most of King Edward Bay has been built out for, a number of years now.
No,
it's not.
King Edward Bay?
no,
It's not
it
even
hasn't
close to
been.
built out.
So, I mean, it ought to be possible to provide a projection of what future consumption is going to look like based on some assumptions. And that might lead to the conclusion that the supply is not going to be adequate.
No, that's exactly what we've done over the past year is look into that. And
Yeah.
that's the conclusion, is that, the supply isn't going to be adequate. It will be adequate with the existing wells if we interconnect them. So, I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
we've been through a 1.5 year process of, of assessing the aquifer, assessing the existing demand and projecting and estimating future demands, and coming up with a plan to deal with that. So I don't agree with you, Jonathan. I guess.
So Patrick, Chana's suggesting that going back to the existing reports and data in order to align on the current situation would be helpful.
You're talking about the March report, 2021, Jana?
So I guess I'm unmuted. I think it's just hyperbole for everyone just to be speculating. Can we just go to the reports, please? I think that's just an easier way for everyone to align. And John, because Jonathan's point is valid, he has a lot of history. It's just going to be great to just go back to the report, get everyone aligned, help the LACs in the communication that BIM needs to have with all of the residents here. I think there's 148 existing connections, and then we can help in that manner. But if we can align and address Jonathan's point, he's a voice, and that deserves to be respectfully responded to. And I'm 100% in agreement and applaud Mike for standing up and saying it's not our system. We are volunteers. This is BIM's responsibility.
Yeah, but we do need your agreement in terms of financing.
You don't, well, you need our input, not agreement, Patrick.
Yeah.
Well, we
I know
do actually, because we have to borrow money, and that becomes an increase on your that becomes likely a parcel tax.
Agreed, but Mike,
I guess we could force a
back me
parcel
up on
tax
this.
on people, but
Patrick, again, I'm not going to debate. It's not my role to debate. Mike, perhaps I've got this wrong. We are an advisory committee to the CAO. CAO ultimately makes decisions.
Yeah, and the council makes decisions, and I think, there's no difference in many ways between investments in water systems and any other investments that BIM makes. They consult, they debate in the council, they make decisions, and we may not like it as homeowners, and that may result in changes at the ballot box, but that's the process. And I think if you want to get us as residents and as a committee behind this, I think it would be really good just to summarize the design basis, the assumptions that you're making, that projects that we need to make these investments, and make it obvious to us that, in fact, these investments are necessary. And it's clearly not obvious to Jonathan.
yeah.
And I think all of us would appreciate that.
This is what we've been doing. I don't know what more you want me to do, on that front.
Well, if you were to put up a table that said, for example, 2021 water consumption, 2022 water consumption projected, 2023 water consumption projected, and so on, based on some assumptions. And I think a key assumption that we haven't talked about is fire flow and how that factors into all this, because
that's what we
that is a factor that surely has a bearing, and we haven't really talked about it.
We've talked a lot about it. I don't know what you mean.
Really?
We talked about it. I just talked about it today. you know.
Yeah, but you made the assumption, Patrick, that you have put forward the assumption that fire flow has to increase to some standard, and that we don't really know what that standard is, and we don't know quite what the driver is for this. So I mean, it would be useful.
We do know what the standard is, and you know, I'm telling you, this is what the cost would be to upgrade your system to deliver fire flows to all the properties in the system. You know, and that's an increase. So that's not something that the municipality would force on, force a water system to do, because it's a huge cost and it's an increased level of service. You know, that, and so that's something that would be, you know, a community decision. It would probably be, you know, need to be some sort of referendum or outreach to understand, well, do people want to spend that money and have that increased level of service?
And is that projected to be for the entire island, that we're going to move to that level of service?
No,
Well, not necessarily. I mean, that's the thing. It's a choice. So, I mean, Bowen Bay doesn't have any hydrants. You know, at least the message we got from their LAC is they're not interested in paying for fire flow. Like, we don't have a good sense of if that's representative of the community. And yeah, maybe you're right. We don't have a good sense of, do Bluewater residents want to pay for fire protection? And the cost is substantial. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a priority for the municipality to upgrade to that level of service unless the community wants it, you know, unless the community is asking for it.
I don't think the community has the information it needs to make that decision at this point.
Well, I don't have any more information for you. You know, it's, I don't know what you want. I don't know what you need.
Well, do we know what the fire flow level is today? Do we know what it'll be after phase one? Do we know what it needs to be according to whatever codes and standards?
Well, we do know all that, and you know, we've done reports that include that elements. I don't know why you're saying that was never looked at, and we've presented that information. So I mean, I'm summarizing it here. I hadn't planned to dive into, you know, the details of what FUS fire flow is. Phase one doesn't address fire flow. It just addresses domestic supply.
Right.
So you need access to bigger storage and larger mains, essentially, to achieve fire flow.
That's not, I don't think that doesn't sound entirely correct, because there's more water in the reservoir is better for any fire incident.
Well, it needs to get to the properties at a certain rate, and it can't do that without big enough mains.
Yeah, well, you're still going to drain the reservoir. It doesn't matter. It may take longer to drain it, but you're still going to drain it.
What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, if you have 1,000 gallons to fight water or 5,000 gallons to fight a fire, well, it's going to be better if you have 5,000 gallons to fight the fire.
Yeah,
the flow might not be as great, but you still, at least you got more water to fight it with. So everybody's going to benefit just by having greater water supply.
Yeah, there's a benefit to higher storage, and there's a benefit to access to greater supply, and those are essentially the benefits
that everybody, King Edward Bay and Bowen Bay, is going to receive.
Yeah,
Bluewater funding at all.
I'm not sure that there's any benefit to King Edward Bay, because they have a new system, and the tank would have been designed to provide adequate fire flow to the size of the tank and the size of the water mains. So I don't know, to Bowen Bay, the issue for them is they don't have adequate sized mains, and they need a bigger storage area because their tanks aren't quite big enough. And Bluewater, I'm not sure. So
yeah,
if we're going to spend even the 660,000 to upgrade the supply, and that money has to come from somewhere, and if that money is going to be borrowed, then we have to have a referendum for the borrowing. And as we did with Cove Bay for the water treatment plant, and as we did with Tunstall, we did sort of the negative side was Tunstall, unless a certain number of people objected, we would go ahead. So we would have to go through that process in order to authorize the municipality to borrow the money and charge the specified area being Bluewater for those costs. So, so that's part of, I guess, Patrick, looking back in the EXP report that I guess was the 2021, it talks about Bluewater's annual demand is 24,145 cubic meters. So, which I guess if I just said divided that by 12 months is 2,000 cubic meters a month. So the Bluewater wells do not produce 2,000 cubic meters a month, do they?
They don't produce enough for Bluewater, not even close.
And once King Edward Bay is fully built out, they won't have 2,000 cubic meters a month of excess, correct?
No, that's,
Okay.
they won't have enough.
All right, so that's why. So I'm not sure if, is there any way, do you have a PowerPoint from back when we presented those previous reports, or was that Urban Systems, Glenn, that did that? I'm just
No,
wondering
I mean,
if-
I could dig it out. I just, I don't have it at my fingertips.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I've got one from March 3rd, linked to the agenda. Is that the one? The EXP Aquifer Assessment Recommendations?
Well, that's the recommendations, and I don't know if the data's in that report that actually shows, you know, what's needed.
Adequacy of supply,
Yeah.
cubic meters. It's linked to the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, there's all kinds of data and, assessments in the EXP report and the urban systems reports. There was the water system upgrades, study and concept analysis. There was the wells, the aquifer assessment, and then there was the well upgrade pre-design essentially report. So there was a number of reports that were, we've gone through with this community. I've tried to explain, along the way. I didn't come prepared today to jump back into, those details about, the aquifer parameters and the current and future demand and fire flow rates, and it's all in there. We can do, I can do another presentation around that, but I thought we were, past that.
Patrick, I have a blue sky question about fire flow. Is there any other practical option to water, like foam or some sort of inert gas, in terms of fighting residential house fires and possibly small forest fires?
Yeah, probably. I don't really know anything about how the cost would compare and what the environmental impacts would be, or
I'm not sure we even have a truck that provides foam.
Well, I mean,
Allison, for $5.4 million, which seems a large percentage of that allocation seems to be going towards providing fire flow. Maybe it would be appropriate to just do a baseline check on the options, because I'm not familiar with it, and I may be, shouting up a tree, but it might be worth talking to fire experts about the options to using, what is basically potable water for fighting fire.
So, but Jerry, the other issue is, how old are the water mains in King Edward, in Bluewater? And how many leaks have we had? Those mains have to be replaced.
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing that, Allison. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely.
and certainly when we do replace them, we would, the marginal cost of putting in a proper size main large enough for fire flow is
Insignificant.
Incremental, yeah.
It's worth it. It's worth it putting in the larger main. It's
Fair
not.
enough. Yep. Thank you.
Rob has a question.
Yeah, I think we're already at quarter to almost 10 to 8 p.m. We're running out of time here. And I think the Unfortunately, the monster in the room is fire flow, and the discussion on phase 2, 3, 4. It's not going to get solved today. It's gonna need a circle back, even just with phase 1, Patrick. I think similar to what we talked with Liam about during the MOU discussions is that we're going to have to pull together the material, answer the questions that are being posed out by the community. Jonathan's posed some very good questions, challenging whether it's status quo or whether we want to spend $660,000 or multi-million dollars down the road here. We need to dissect that and then rebuild it into more of a presentation that answers some of these questions and alleviates some of these concerns, or substantiates those concerns that people have got, to then go in a direction that I think we all can eventually agree upon. I think that's where we need to go with this, because right now I've got half a dozen questions even in this presentation that will bog us down even more today that I don't think we've got time for. So unfortunately, I think we need to move on and know that the LAC has had discussions with yourself, Patrick, and during the MOU process that the phase 1 is a consideration. We need more information. We need more discussions on how the dollars get split between the different LSAs. There's challenges because one LSA cannot fund infrastructure upgrades in another LSA based on the current bylaws. There's a lot of hair on everything right now that we need to work through on this.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Rob, you requested that there be an added item, leak repair update from Patrick. Shall we move to that before we go to financing?
And I guess what I should add here is maybe just to follow up with this, Patrick. I think there should be another community meeting just focusing on phase 1 and maybe a little bit on phase 2 and beyond, just as a larger scale item. But do you agree with that?
Well, I thought that's what we were doing tonight, Rob. I don't know.
But
this is.
I think I'm understanding what some of the issues are, Patrick. So let's have a chat after the meeting. But we've got to get into Kristen and the financing, and it's probably fair, given the big leak we had, to ask for that. Rob's asked for a bit of an update on leaks, which brings up the issue of the old lines and needing to be repaired.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a leak discovered on Saturday, well, early morning, and this is one of the Garrett unfortunately had a head injury that he was he was still somehow he was active. Our staff were trying to figure out how to deal with this. Really what it came down to was lack of an excavator was a big stumbling block, and I had asked for, so essentially it was fixed on Monday morning, first thing. The wells were kept running enough to keep water supply to everyone through the weekend. If we had our own excavator, our ability to respond to these emergencies would be significantly better. I did try and get an excavator purchase in the 2022 budget, which was unsuccessful. So, again, I will try to get that into the budget for next year. It's not just for water emergencies. It's for other things too, being able to do our own ditching and increasing our capacity to do more infrastructure management on the island. So that's it was essentially the same story that we see in a number of places around, not just this water system. We had a leak in the Tunstall Bay system earlier this year that was essentially identical. It's these water mains were just kind of thrown in there. They weren't bedded properly. There's just large rock mixed with whatever else the roads were built out of, and so they weren't built properly, and so eventually you get a pointy rock wedged up against the line, and it punches a hole in it, and that's what's happened here. it's a common story we see, we see everywhere. So it's, it's not a very resilient system in that most of the lines are probably like that. And, we're going to be, our staff put in a lot of effort trying to find leaks, particularly in the more vulnerable systems like Bluewater, and it's not easy to find. Obviously when a hole gets punched in a line, it becomes apparent. It's easy to find, and again, and we fix it as quickly as we can. So I do have some photos and videos that Garrett sent me. I couldn't, I can't figure out how to send it to you, but my plan is that I'll pass that along to you because you had asked for photos. I'm not sure what, in terms of a report on what occurred, if you need more information than that.
Yeah, and just as I reiterated with my emails when this was all happening, stemming from the 2019 crisis with the massive leak there, there were expectations that any future leaks would be dealt with in a timely manner, because we buy water off of King Edward Bay, and every gallon of water that's going down into the creeks is costing the users of Bluewater for purchase of coverage of that water that's being lost. So that's our dollars that are being lost by not reacting quickly to the situation.
Well, we did. We reacted as quickly as we could. We fixed it as soon as we could.
Yeah. Well, I guess the expectation of it should have happened on the weekend.
Well, there was no excavator, Rob. Like there was we couldn't get a machine to get in there and fix it.
And this is something that BIM will have to look at further, extending on from the discussions 3 years ago on how to handle situations like that. But a more urgent concern, I guess, is 848 Captain's Way area that supposedly has had a leak for the past year now that hasn't been addressed. And what is the status of that?
Well, that's one that they're looking into. There's no the first thing they do is check and see if there's chlorinated water coming out of the, seeping out. There's no evidence of that.
Yeah, there was a year ago.
Well,
yeah,
so that's not what I'm told from our staff.
So you're getting
there's evidence, like water seeps out of the bank. If it's not chlorinated, it could be groundwater. So the next step is to looking to go there in the middle of the night with the listening device and see if we can find anything.
So we're gonna have to come up with a way BIM is going to have to come up with a way to get on top of these even more, because that one is a concern as well when I find out about it a year into the notification of the Muni that was happening. So,
well, I don't think we know that's happening. That's.
Thank you very much, Rob, for bringing that up. We should move on to this excellent presentation from the CFO regarding user rates and finances. Kristen?
Thank you. I'll share my screen with you. Don't think you have it. You don't have it, do you? I don't have the red line around it. Do you have my PowerPoint?
I can see it on the left.
Yeah,
You just have to start your presentation, Kristen.
I can see it. I can see it fully.
Okay. There. How's that?
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks. So I will speak first a little bit about consumption, and then I'll go into water rates a little bit. So my analysis focused on the metered consumption as measured last summer. So last summer, in 2021, average daily summer household consumption was 96 gallons per household per day. And for an average household, we use a figure of about 2.5 persons per household. So that means that on average, per person use in Bluewater is about 38.4 imperial gallons per day. And when you compare that against the provincial average, the average for most people across the province in BC is about 69 imperial gallons per day. And I took that data from the BC Municipal Water Survey that was taken in 2016 and undertaken by UBC.
How does that
So-
compare to other Bowen or Bowen Island communities?
I've only been working so far on the 3 West side. I can give you the information for the other west side.
Be curious.
Yeah, I will. I'll have to print out my other presentation.
Sure, I can
Edward
get it for
Bay
you,
is
Kristen.
104 per household, and Bowen Bay is 116 per household. So take those numbers, divide by 2.5 to get to the per person average. So I've just done the 3. I haven't quite done any analysis of the remaining water systems on the east side yet.
You're going to have to watch the next 2 days worth of presentations, Kristen, to get the rest of the information.
No, the other systems, the Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay.
Yeah, no, but I
not
meant,
there yet.
yeah.
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 So Bluewater on average, a person in Bluewater is using about 55% of the provincial daily per capita use. So I think it's fair for us to say that residents in Bluewater are extremely careful when it comes to water use. And to just kind of show you on a distribution what that looks like is we have about 5 homes, 5 properties that are using up around 330 imperial gallons per day. There's about 4 homes that are using, well, there are 4 homes that are using about 220 gallons per day. 16 are using about 170 per day. 31 are using about 120 per day. And by far the biggest number of homes are consuming about that 75 gallons per day number. And then we have about 32 properties that are consuming about 25 gallons per day. So very low usage on that one. And the user rate across the 3 districts, we have a unified rate. It's the same rate that is being charged to Bowen Bay, King Edward Bay, and Bluewater Park systems. It says that it's a metered rate system, but because the flat rate allocation is so generous, it turns out that most people, as we look on that, most properties are using well below that threshold. So most people are paying a flat rate of $960 per year, and that gives them an allotment of 7,200 gallons per month. That equates to $240 per day. In 2021, there were 6 properties that used in excess of that 240 gallon per day number, and they incurred metered rate charges. So we collected 4% of all of the revenue was collected through the metered rates, and 96% of the revenue came from the flat rates. So in total, we collected 151,547, and that figure was shared among all of the connected properties equally. And there were 6,800, it's 6,827 was paid by the highest 6 users. So you can really see the bulk of the revenue is just distributed equally among each property through a flat rate system. And effectively what happens then is we have the current rate structure impacts everyone, that those who use the least are subsidizing those who use the most. We believe that conservation principles should be embedded into the rate structure. So we've devised a new rate structure that will achieve fairness and equity, and at the same time promote conservation of the resource. We propose that we collect fees through a new hybrid rate structure. We'd like to combine a true flat rate with a true metered rate. And we've moved to this model in Tunstall Bay. It's a hybrid rate structure. It's been there for several years now. And our goal is to move in this direction for all systems island-wide. We're doing this to achieve fairness through an equitable collection of fees from all users, shifting it to a user pay principle to encourage water conservation and align at the same time with council's strategic priorities. Council has identified their strategic priorities in their island plan. And specifically, they have directed staff to review and update water system rate structures, which will encourage conservation. So this proposed rate that we've developed is a flat rate of $175 per quarter, and then start charging metered rates for every gallon of water used. So we would get rid of that initial allotment. And up to 4,500 gallons would be charged at ½ cent per gallon. The next 2,500, and that's consumption around the range of between 50 and 76 gallons per day, would be charged at 0.0075 per gallon. The following 2,000 gallons, and that's for a range between 77 to 99 gallons per day, at 1.25 cents per gallon. And anything over 9,000, equating to about 100 gallons per day, would be charged at 2 cents per gallon. And again, just to remind you that in Bluewater, the average household is consuming at about 96 gallons per day, and that's in the summer. And we expect that that summer usage is probably the highest at any point in the year. So we do anticipate that we would continue to do monthly meter readings throughout the summer to identify potential leaks. We would continue our practice of notifying all of the high water usage to any residents to enable us to pick up leaks and identify suspected leaks. And we are proposing that we change from an annual billing frequency to a quarterly billing frequency, and that we've looked at our schedule and our ability to read meters, and we think that that could take place in March, June, September, and December. The impact that a property owner could expect to see. So anyone who's currently consuming under that 100 gallon per day threshold, under this proposed rate, it is likely that that based on the 2021 consumption patterns, if all things stay the same, that those properties would actually see a decrease in their bill. So if you consumed at 50 gallons per day, the metered quarterly charge for that 3-month period would be $23. Add that to the 175 flat rate for the quarter, would be a total quarterly billing of $198. So if we extrapolate that to 4 quarters, that comes to $792. And that, as compared to the current annual flat rate of $946, would result in annual savings of about $154. There are about 20 properties in Bluewater that are in that range. Now, a property that is consuming at about the average, so close to 100 gallons per day, again, the flat rate would be $175 per quarter. Add to a metered quarterly billing of 68 comes to $243 for the quarter. And again, extrapolated across the entire year is about $971. So that's quite close to what homeowners are currently paying on that flat rate basis. And lastly, the properties that are, I'm going backwards, sorry. There we go. The properties that are using in excess of that average, so looking at average daily consumption at around the 150 gallon per day usage, they would be looking at an annual increase of about close to $400, and it gets significantly higher from there. We did have a couple of properties that were up over 300 gallons per day, and you can really see there the shift in charges from those lower users up to the higher end of the usage spectrum. So we believe that this is a rate structure that achieves those objectives of council, which is to implement consumption-based billing. It's it's something that has been tested in another district, and we can manage it. We can accommodate the readings and we can accommodate the billings, and we believe that it really will help to focus users on just being aware of every gallon that is actually used. I can take questions. I can continue whatever. If anybody wants to jump in, I'm happy to stop, or I can keep going.
Was that just for the summer months?
No, that would be quarterly, and it would be metered, measured, and billed year round.
And those rates would apply throughout the year, Kristen?
Yeah.
Okay. And the 946 that you show as current billing, is that before taxes or something? Because I think we pay 960, do we not?
I believe so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got $14 difference. I think you're right.
Small, yeah, just a.
Okay. Yeah.
How does lost leaders factor into this as well?
Well, it's anything that's lost through the system is not captured by a meter, so it wouldn't be charged to a homeowner. It's just what goes through your household meter.
So wholesale rate for the lost leaders would then just be spread out amongst the connections under the flat rate charge.
So I mean, anything that's lost is being paid for as part of that cost that gets contributed back to King Edward Bay.
Yeah. Operating cost.
Right.
And it just becomes covered. It's almost like a fixed cost of operating the system.
Okay.
Love it.
Kristen, in the present billing, I think there's an allowance for contributing to a capital fund. Am I right? And how would that be factored in?
So I can continue on to the next part, which is to look at your financial plan. So under the structure is we're looking at achieving a revenue target. So we look to, and our goal is to achieve that annual revenue target. In 2021, the user rate revenue target was 145. We actually collected 148,560, and in 2022, it's been increased to 165,000. There, other revenue there is other miscellaneous revenue. A homeowner asks us to come and turn their meter off or something like that. There's also potential for investment revenue on the reserve funds. But overall, we're looking to achieve a budget target of $165,000 this year. From that, we know that the Bluewater Park operating budget is almost $91,800. Bluewater is budgeted to make a contribution to King Edward Bay of $30,000. And that leaves $39,201 to contribute into the reserve. So there's two approaches to do it. You can set that capital amount first and say, we want to ensure that we contribute no less than X dollars to our capital reserve each year. And that's certainly an approach that we could take. Then we add the operating costs and the cost to King Edward Bay on top of that, and that gives us our revenue target. Or we can just look at the overall operating costs and see what's left over that would be a contribution to reserves, and just get a sense, is that enough? Is it not enough? This year, we have planned to make almost a $40,000 contribution to reserves. I would like to see that number higher, and I think that most I'm hoping that the LAC committee, when we talk about the budget next year, will be in support of that recommendation to increase the contribution to reserves. But just kind of given the timeline and the tight timeline that we were under this year, we just sort of took the same approach in the 3 water districts. We raised rates by 13.4%, which we believed would be acceptable, and that we could managed to ensure that we still made a decent contribution to reserves and covered the operating costs. So I will just, 13.4 increase to our user rate revenue. And so far, year to date, where we're at with expenditures is total expenditures of about 36,509. They're in line with where we need to be at this point in the year, according to the budget. It's important to note that about half of the budget is actually labor, and many of those charges, you won't see them posted until year end, because what they are is actually just an allocation of some municipal expenditures then that are shared on a pro rata basis among all of the water systems. So we do that as a year end entry. So while we can certainly measure the labor costs and anything that's a direct operating expense of Bluewater Park throughout the year, like hydro bills and communications charges and things like that, there are a lot of allocated charges that are done as a one-time entry at year end. The 30,000 is included in the budget this year to transfer to King Edward Bay. I basically used the same amount that was used last year. It was 29,817. So I didn't want to plan for less than that. And $6,000 is going to be transferred to Bowen Island General. And that helps to fund and offset the costs of, like Patrick said, some of the equipment, the heavy equipment that we need to acquire, vehicles that are shared jointly by all of the water systems. It doesn't make sense for any one water system to be allocated a capital cost of a shared asset. So we just own them at the Bowen Island General municipality level, and we charge them out annually to the water systems. That leaves about a 39,000 contribution for the reserve fund. And we just put very minimalist capital budget in there. Really, it's just a provision in case a pump went down or something. And we have that planned in the capital budget this year. So if all goes according to this plan, then the reserve fund balance, which started the year at just over 80,000, should grow to close to 100,000 by the end of this year. And we'll just take the approach in future years that we do want to increase that annual contribution to reserves. As a municipality, we are continuing to monitor all available grant programs to help offset the costs of some of these proposed capital improvements. There is also the potential for contributions to come through additional development. There's also a potential for if there's other financing methods or other tools that we can use. If the residents of Bluewater indicated that they supported the municipality to move forward with a capital project, knowing that in a few years there may be a large development that would be coming online, there are tools that we have. One of them is called a latecomers agreement that we can help to defray some of the costs and charge them back to the developments as they come on later on down the line. So we did do that with part of the sewer upgrade going down Miller Road. We did a latecomer agreement there. We could consider, or we could investigate a similar model if there was a capital project that kind of met those conditions, and that we could just collect from the new properties as they came on later on down the line. I think Patrick noted that the phase 1 upgrade was $660,000. I think we discussed that quite significantly. I just wanted to give you an idea of what a $660,000 payment was to finance. I picked a 10-year term, and a $660,000 payment over a 10-year term would result in a payment of about $572 per person or per household. The balance of the project we know is the water main replacement and upgrades and reservoir. And as Patrick indicated, the cost for that would be in the range, in the order of magnitude of just over $5 million. And there's several different annual costs to finance those particular amounts if they were borrowed. I assumed a term of 30 years for each of those additional ones, and they range about from $693 to $866 for the cost of financing a capital project with that price tag. So without that financing, grant financing, we know that this cost is going to be very high. And we are tonight looking for feedback from the community to inform where we go, what decisions should be made about moving forward with these projects. Specifically, and I think some of the discussion has already kind of gone in this direction, but what are the community's priorities? Is it safe potable drinking water? Is there a priority for fire protection? That is going to need to be communicated from the community members themselves. So we'd also, I'd specifically like some feedback from the community about the plan for consumption-based billing, and also about a timing, if we're going to implement this new rate structure, what the timing for that is. So we do have some opportunities to implement metered rate, a change to the billing partway through this year, or we could just say, no, we're going to do it as of January 1st. And I'd like to hear from people in the community what their thoughts were on that. So please provide us with some feedback on those things. Attend a meeting, email Patrick, Annette, or myself directly, or email Mayor and Council directly. And sorry, I duplicated a slide. Please copy the Bluewater Park LAC on all email correspondence. So that's it for me. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Kristen?
I have I have a statement and a couple of questions. I thought that was an excellent presentation, Kristen, and I know the devil's always in the details, but I think the proposed rate structure is really interesting, and I think achieves many of the objectives that we're looking for here, particularly the idea of conservation. So that's my view on it. The question I have is, if we were to do the phase 1 project that Patrick described, would we then not be needing to contribute every year to the King Edward Bay for the water that they contribute to the sort of mutual system that would then be on the west side? Anybody got that far?
Part of it is, I guess, what happens now is the meter is on a supply line from King Edward Bay to Bluewater. It runs both ways, and the net is charged back to Bluewater. I think it's a Patrick question. Yeah. I don't,
the model that's happening now wouldn't make sense. Currently, essentially, you're taking water just from King Edward Bay. We'd be bringing, supply from Bowen Bay through a King Edward Bay reservoir. And so we'd have to come up with a different arrangement. Essentially we'd be operating these 3 systems as one system, which, functionally it should be, and it is really. And how we don't have the answer, as to how the operational cost sharing would work. But it would have to be something different than the current arrangement.
And I think you would look also at the wholesale cost of producing the water would most likely be spanned out over all of the water systems potentially, which would overall reduce the cost of producing that water. That's in my mind.
Yeah, and there's essentially there's an operational consolidation. We'd still have to look at infrastructure costs within service areas. The systems are all quite different, but in terms of the operational costs of operating the system, running the system, and delivering water to everybody, I think it would be more of a operationally looking at it as one system. We have this many costs, this many users are being supplied water from this system, and they share in the costs accordingly. So I don't think it wouldn't make sense to have this $30,000 payment to another water system. I think we're into an operating model where we're sharing costs over a larger number of people.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a lot easier to budget and
Correct.
record expenses.
I mean, essentially it would
makes
be
sense.
financial, like in terms of the ongoing cost to Bluewater, it would be advantageous, right? You're not, buying every gallon of water that comes through the pipe, right? You're sharing in an operation cost.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, which I think is something we all feel is, a good direction to go in. Really.
Alfred, did you have something? Do you want to unshare, Kristen, or I can unshare you?
Yeah, can you? I just have, oh, there it is. Stop share. I see it. Sorry.
Okay.
I haven't done this for a bit. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Whose hand? Did I see Alfred's hand?
Alfred, yeah.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Alfred.
He doesn't seem to be though.
Oh,
Can't hear him. Can't.
Alfred, do you want to type it into the chat? Can you type into the chat?
Allison, you're on mute as well.
There you are. Okay, well, we're waiting for Alfred. I guess Kristen's looking for feedback on, now we want that slide, the proposed rates. Rob, you're a fan?
Is Tunstall Bay billed 4 times a year right now, Kristen, or is it
Yeah.
only billed?
4 times.
So we actually send out the bill 4 times, or you just send out one bill calculated in 4 quarters?
4
So
times.
4 times,
are-
okay.
Are we going to be voting on this proposed new rate structure tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
In our next-
And currently we read the meters May 1st to October 1st, right?
Correct. And then we, Annette confirms that we do another reading or 2 just for informational purposes during the winter.
To match up with the quarterly for the remaining parts of the year, thereabouts.
We would read them for billing purposes quarterly and then do additional readings in the summer to ensure that we are on top of any high consumption.
Which
during
makes sense.
the highest months, yeah.
It also is part of detecting leaks. If you're not reading meters very frequently, you've got less ability to pick up on those.
Yeah. Definitely it provides that reconciliation that we need. I know that Alfred has been a big proponent of this over many years, and I'm not sure how this aligns with your thoughts on it, Alfred. Unfortunately, we can't hear you.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Shake
like
your
it,
head if
Alfred?
you're unhappy, nod if you're happy.
Alfred, good, bad?
Oh,
Great. His dream has been realized.
And I know that like myself, this kind of a rate structure is what I've been talking about over the years as well, as being a more fair structure for the lower water users versus the more robust water users, and hopefully be able to promote more water conservation in the higher user end of it as well too. And I feel that potentially China, this is echoing what you've been looking for as well. I don't know if you have anything more to add to it. Yeah, he's in agreement. Michael?
Question, I can't read the question from Jana.
Okay, so he's saying he's in agreement as well, and great to see a uniform rate structure introduced. Question, does BIM have the capacity, FTEs, to carry out the reading annually?
Yep, Annette has put together a proposed meter reading schedule for all of the water districts, and we've laid it all out on an annual basis, what month they would be read in.
So that
Annette,
drives.
did you have any additional feedback on that?
No, that's correct. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference, the meter reading schedule to what it is now, since it's being read monthly throughout the summer, plus a couple of additional readings. It's just for the billing, it's more frequently.
So how much more time is needed to do the quarterly billings? Staff time and hours for meter reading?
I think it's minimal, because it'll have, the structure is set up in a way that it can be done really fast. Instead, the way it has been done so far, the annual billing where we have to look into every month's consumption for each household, and then it's not as streamlined as the way it's been done so far. It's easier in the system to do it regularly throughout the year. It's a faster process.
Because you can just import and calculate, as opposed to when you don't do it for
Yeah.
the whole year from one period to the next, then you have to manually put in an opening balance to calculate. So it actually works better.
And the additional people power required to read the meters more frequently has been factored into the rate structure, right?
I don't think there is more people power necessary. There are no considerably more readings for the three systems.
The redistribution of effort by the sound of it, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do
well,
you
I think
actually mail out bills?
Yeah.
Or do you send them by email?
You'll have more postage because we'll send them quarterly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think eventually.
But I think it's worth it.
Yeah, but you also eventually look at opting for people to opt out on snail mail versus email or other means too.
Yeah, something we
Next
could
step
look at.
down
for
the road.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry, any comments? Because I know you've been working quite closely with Alfred on this over the last couple of months, taking it further. And what do you?
I'm most enthusiastic. I think what Kristen has come up with is probably 20 years too late, but I welcome it with all my heart. I think it's a fantastic step forward. As the LAC knows, Alfred and I met a few weeks ago to, I wanted to tap his brain for all the work that he's done over the years and understand where he was coming from. And just to take it one step further, we came up with a hypothetical structure that I think conceptually is pretty close to what Kristen has presented tonight. So I'm fully in favor of completely supporting this move. Fantastic.
Great. Any comments from you, Jonathan?
Well, I doing the rate structure is fine. I just don't agree with the year-round part. I mean, again, it comes down, it's just the summer months, 3 months is all they're concerned about water. I mean, honestly, the rest of the year, it's not an issue. We got water coming out of our ears. So I don't see the point, you know, I mean, it's fine to bill it, you know, for the summer. That's what we're paying for, right? It's just the summer months. Because the rest of the year, I mean, I can leave the tap running 24 hours a day, and we're not going to run out of water. So I don't know why anybody would be, you know, if somebody wants to do some big wash or something in the middle of January, go for it. I mean, use as much water as you want to. You know, water coming out, you know, like crazy. So we just go so overboard on these things, right? Like, you know, we live in a rainforest. Water's not an issue. It's an issue for a few months of the year when we don't store enough, and that's it. But it's not like we have you know, an issue with water. So, I mean, if it's a vote, I'll vote no, because I can't vote yes in terms of having metered rates for 12 months of the year. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, maybe we should move this into the voting area, then there's can be discussion in that as well. So we'll just do, Patrick, do you have everything you need from the,
Oh,
We've lost him.
Do you want to adjourn the community meeting and
Yeah.
open the LAC meeting?
yeah, so we'll adjourn, just take a quick little break and I'll knock off the YouTube and knock it back on again for a new meeting.
Okay.
Thank you so much, community. We're
Do we have
adjourned.
to call back in?